Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I became a cop when I was 23. Not for the glory, not for the paycheck, definitely not for the stress, but because it was all I ever wanted to do. My grandfather was a sheriff in East Texas back when folks still tied their horses to post oaks and settled disputes with fists or shotguns. My dad worked dispatch for our little department in Hughes County until his heart gave out when I was 17. Maybe that's why the badge never felt like a choice. It felt like inheritance. By the time this happened, I'd been wearing the badge for 11 years. I'd worked days, overnights, weekends, hurricanes, you name it. Hughes County wasn't exactly the Wild West, but the pine woods stretch long out here, and weird things hide deep in the dark if you look hard enough. We'd had the occasional stolen car, domestic call, missing livestock. One time, a kid turned up missing for 12 hours, only to be found hiding in an old deer blind just to scare his parents. But what happened on County Road 378 still wakes me up sometimes. It was late October, the kind of night where the air has a bite, and everything feels a little too still. I was working the night shift alone, same as usual. Just me, Unit 24, and the rolling miles of pine needles and blacktop. No streetlights out that way, no houses either. Just old paper mills, forgotten shacks, and the endless tree line leaning in close like it was trying to listen to your thoughts. The shift had been dead. Not a single call for 3 hours. I was driving slow, maybe 35, just letting the night roll by through the open window when I saw them. Red tail lights. Off the right shoulder, maybe 15 yards into the pine straw. No other cars around, no hazards blinking. I slowed down, letting my cruiser's tires crunch across the gravel edge of the road. The vehicle was an old silver Ford Focus. Driver's side door was wide open. That's when I saw him. A figure stepped out of the car. Male, average height, couldn't make out his face. He didn't wave me down, didn't say a word, just turned and took off into the trees like his soul was on fire. Unit 24 dispatch, I said, lifting the radio. I've got an abandoned vehicle on the east side of 378 just south of Old Pine Mill Road. One male fled into the woods on foot. I'm going to investigate. 10-4-24, came the voice of Krista, our usual dispatcher on night duty. Do you need backup? Not yet, I'll advise. I stepped out and let my flashlight cut a path into the woods. The air was quiet except for the distant chirp of crickets and the low rustle of leaves overhead. My hand rested lightly on my holster as I approached the open driver's door. Immediately, I caught a smell that turned my stomach. Rot. Not trash or mildew, rot. The kind of sickly sweet stink that makes your mind go somewhere it doesn't want to. Inside, the car was trashed. Glove box open, center console ripped out. There were bloody paper towels on the passenger seat and more crumpled up in the back. Not just spotted, soaked. Like someone had tried to mop up a mess and gave up halfway through. Hello? I called out, stepping back from the vehicle toward the tree line. Hughes County Sheriff's Office. If you're hurt, call out. We can help you. Silence. Then, from maybe 50 feet inside the woods, a voice. Low. Male. Just one word. Muffled by trees. Could have been stop. Could have been help. Hell, could have been anything. But I heard it. Sir, I called out again, this time louder. I need you to come out. If you're bleeding, we can get you medical. But I need you to step into the light where I can see you. Nothing. I scanned the beam of my flashlight across the thick underbrush. The pines swallowed the light. No movement. No glint of eyes. I backed off a step and radioed dispatch again. Dispatch, 24. I've got blood inside the vehicle. Unknown injury or situation. Smell of decomposition coming from the interior. I'm requesting backup to my location. 10-4-24. Nearest unit is 15 out. Copy. I walked back to the rear of the Focus. Still no plates. No dealership sticker either. It was clean, scrubbed of identity. I opened the trunk, and the smell hit harder, thicker, more pungent. I've dealt with dead animals before, roadkill, even one tragic wreck involving a suicide. But this was worse. There was something wrapped in bloody towels near the spare tire well. I pulled on gloves, crouched down, and peeled the cloth away. A human hand, severed at the wrist, soaked in blood, dark and gelatinous, fingernails chewed, skin torn. I stood up too fast and had to swallow hard to keep my stomach down. I radioed again, voice tight. Dispatch Unit 24. I need crime scene and homicide investigators to my location. I've got a severed human appendage. Appears to be a left hand. Advise coroner to stand by. Copy that. 24. Assistance en route. Red and blue lights eventually pierced the trees behind me. Deputy Sam Brooks was first to arrive, followed by Officer Alvarado from the State Highway Patrol. They brought out their rifles and helped me canvass the tree line. We found nothing. Not a drop of blood leading away. Not a trail. Not even a broken twig. Whoever that man was, he had vanished into a forest too shallow to hide in. The canine unit came from 2 counties over. They swept the area until dawn. No scent, no signs. Later, the vehicle was reported stolen from a Walmart parking lot 70 miles away. Registered to a retired school teacher named Joanne Brister. She had no idea who could have taken it. Claimed she'd left the keys in the glove box just for a minute, while she ran in to return a humidifier. We ran the fingerprints from the steering wheel. Nothing in the system. We ran DNA from the hand. No match. We searched missing persons, parole jumpers, wanted bulletins. Nothing. The bloodied tissues matched the DNA on the hand, so we know it all came from the same person. But if that was the driver, why run? And if it wasn't, who was bleeding out in that car and where were they now? Weeks passed, then months. The hand was buried in a private forensic graveyard outside Tyler, Texas. No name, no headstone, just John Doe number 4187. Sometimes on slow nights, Sam and I would talk about it over coffee. You really think he just disappeared? Sam asked once. No blood trail, I said. That means he wasn't the one who lost that hand. So where's the rest of the body? What if there never was one? He said, and gave a half-hearted laugh. But I saw the doubt in his eyes. I requested the dashcam footage from my unit, reviewed it frame by frame. When I saw the man step out of the car and bolt, my heart dropped. Because the hand in the trunk was a left hand, and the man who fled the car, he opened the door with his left hand. I reported it, but it led nowhere. Officially, it was dismissed as misidentification. Possibly the hand belonged to a previous victim. Maybe it was planted, or maybe I was mistaken. But I know what I saw. That hand shouldn't have existed, and that man, whoever he was, is still out there somewhere. I had always been comfortable working nights. The world quieted down just enough to see things clearly. The streets emptied, the air got colder, and the kind of people you encountered changed. I've worn the badge in Pulaski County for almost 10 years now. My partner, Deputy Alex Ramirez, had about 4 under his belt. We were both assigned to a special unit in the sheriff's office, the Offender Supervision and Electronic Monitoring Team, or OSEM for short. We tracked people who wore tethers. Those little ankle monitors meant to keep offenders honest while they lived outside jail walls. Some of the work was mundane, false alerts, low battery notifications, or GPS drift. But every now and then, you'd get someone who went dark. That night, it was a woman named Camille Brody, 28 years old, probation for drug trafficking, with a history of mental health evaluations. She had been compliant for the last 6 months, until 2 nights ago when her tether went offline. Her last pinged location was in the township of Willowbend, one of the poorer corners of the county. Not quite rural, not quite urban, just scattered homes on large wooded lots with questionable power hookups and long histories with code enforcement. Dispatch had confirmed her last known address, a two-story colonial that must have seen its prime in the 70s, now faded and leaning under the weight of time. As Alex and I pulled up around 8:02 p.m., the sun had dipped below the trees, and the house sat under a canopy of shadows. The streetlights hadn't come on yet. The yard was overgrown, the porch light was dead, and what little glow came from inside was dim and orange, like someone had replaced every bulb with 40-watt antiques. We parked on the curb and cut the engine. "You see the meter box?" I asked, peering through the windshield. Alex nodded. "Looks jerry-rigged as hell." I checked my vest, clicked the safety off my duty Glock, and stepped out. "All right, I'll hold the east side. You take the front." We moved like we always did, routine, cautious but not paranoid. I skirted around the passenger side of the house, sticking close to the wall. The windows were grimy and dark, nothing visible inside. Just as I got into position, Alex knocked on the front door, 2 sharp raps followed by a pause. From my position, I had a clear line of sight to the front porch. I watched as the door creaked open, slower than it should have. A woman, maybe mid-40s, gaunt with stringy brown hair, stuck her face halfway out. She didn't look at Alex. She looked directly at me. I froze. There was no way she could have seen me. I wasn't in line with any front-facing window, and I hadn't made a sound. But her eyes locked right where I stood, like she'd been expecting me. Alex's voice broke the tension. "Ma'am, we're with the county sheriff's department. We're looking for Camille Brody. Is she here?" She didn't respond to him. Instead, her lips parted just enough to mumble, "She's here. Can we come in and talk to her?" Still staring past him, at me, she slowly stepped back and opened the door wider. That's when I moved up. My boots made soft crunches on the gravel, and by the time I reached the porch, Alex had 1 foot in the doorway. The air inside hit me like a wave. It was warm, unnaturally warm, and musty, like wet wood and dust. No electronics hummed, no TV on in the background, no radio. Just silence. As we stepped inside, the woman suddenly dropped to her hands and knees. "Camille!" she shrieked, her voice high and desperate. "Camille! Come out!" "They're here." Alex and I exchanged a look. This was officially not routine anymore. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you live here?" he asked, his hand hovering near his taser, just in case. "She's here," the woman whispered again. "I saw her earlier. She was wearing the red shoes." "Is Camille your daughter?" I asked. "No, she takes care of me, I think." Her face contorted into confusion, then fear. She was here. We radioed in. No backup yet. We were still coded as a welfare check or tether violation, and in our unit, that rarely warranted more than 2 deputies unless shots were fired. That was our call to make, and we didn't make it yet. The house was dim. A single bulb in the living room cast long shadows across the yellowing wallpaper and sagging furniture. No photos, no calendars, no clocks. "She stays upstairs sometimes," the woman muttered, now crawling alongside us as we moved deeper into the house. She dragged her palms across the hardwood, her knees making soft thuds. "Sometimes she's in the crawl space. Sometimes she hides in the walls." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Crawl space?" "She doesn't like doors. She says they're listening." We started our sweep. The layout of the home was weird. 4 bedrooms, but no clear hallway. Instead, doors just opened into other doors, sometimes looping back. I left one room and walked into what I thought was the kitchen, only to find myself back at the front foyer. "You just went that way," Alex said, frowning. "I know. I'm telling you, this layout doesn't make sense." "She's in the attic sometimes," the woman said, now a few feet behind me on the floor again. We headed upstairs, the steps creaking under us. At the top, instead of bedrooms, we found a single door. "I thought this place had 4 beds," I said. "It does, downstairs." That didn't track. The door was painted white, but thick layers of old chipped paint had sealed the edges like glue. It wouldn't budge. "On 3? Alex asked. I nodded, and we both shoved. With a sudden crack, the seam gave way, and the door swung open. It was not a bedroom. The smell hit us first, mold and rot. The space beyond was a crawl-style attic. No carpet, no drywall, just exposed insulation, old boxes, and wood beams. A single light bulb hung from a string in the center. "Camille?" I called out. Nothing. Then I saw it. Tucked into a corner, half buried in insulation, was a pile of clothes. Red shoes stuck out from underneath. I moved closer, hand on my gun. But it wasn't Camille. It was just her clothes, clean, neatly folded, on top of a pillow. "Why the hell would someone do this?" Alex whispered. Behind us, the woman screeched again from the bottom of the stairs. "Camille, get down from there. You know you can't be up there." We backed out. I closed the attic door and noticed my hands were shaking slightly. I chalked it up to tension, but that tension wasn't easing. Back downstairs, the woman had vanished. "Ma'am?" Alex called. Nothing. Then I heard a door creak open somewhere, one we hadn't touched. I rounded a corner into the kitchen, but it wasn't the kitchen, it was another hallway. It looked identical to the one upstairs. "Alex," I said quietly, "I think this house changes. That's impossible. I just walked into a hallway that shouldn't be here." Then came a sound, faint, like someone crawling across wood, but right behind me. I spun around. The woman was there, not standing, just staring from all fours, silently. "How did you get behind me?" I asked. She didn't blink. "Camille lives in the in-between." "In between what?" She smiled. Her teeth were too many, too straight. "In between the walls, in between the seconds." Alex grabbed my sleeve. "We're leaving. Now." We cleared the house, again. Every room, every inch. Camille was gone. Her tether was gone. No signs of life. Just that woman crawling after us, sometimes whispering, sometimes laughing, always watching. We called it at 8:21 p.m., but it felt like hours. When I looked at my watch, I could have sworn we'd been inside for at least 90 minutes. As we got back into the cruiser, the woman stood in the doorway, back to her feet, staring at us through the storm door's glass. No expression, no sound. We drove away in silence. We never filed a full report. Just that Camille wasn't there. No signs of her. The woman couldn't confirm when she last saw her. We chalked it up to poor mental health and a wrong address. But we both knew something was off. Weeks later, Camille's tether showed up. It was mailed. No return address. It was sent to my house. It was supposed to be just another wellness check. That's how Eli starts every time he tells the story. Not that he tells it much anymore. Not since the drinking started. Not since the therapy. Not since the baby. See, Cypress County isn't the kind of place you hear much about unless you grew up lost somewhere in the middle of southern Georgia. Not quite city, not quite swamp, just spread out stretches of pine and lonely houses, most of which had seen better decades. Folks kept to themselves. That was the draw for many of them. Eli Morgan had been with the Cypress County Sheriff's Office for almost 6 years when it happened. He wasn't fresh out of the academy anymore, but he still had some of that clean polish energy about him. He believed in doing things by the book, never cut corners, and maybe that's what made him go inside that house. It was mid-June, already pushing the edge of 100 degrees by late morning. Eli had been patrolling with his partner, Sergeant Marcus Darnell, when dispatch came over the radio. Unit 23, wellness check at 492 Marigold Hollow Road. Caller reports elderly male not seen or heard from in over a week. No response at door. Marcus groaned. Bet you a sweet tea he just forgot to pay his phone bill. Eli smirked. Bet you he's dead in a recliner with the TV on and the AC off. They didn't expect what they found. Marigold Hollow was the sort of road that wasn't paved for the last quarter mile. Dirt kicked up behind their cruiser as they approached a sagging old house at the far end of the tree line. The porch roof had caved in on one side. There were about 6 different lawn ornaments half buried in grass that hadn't been cut since spring. The man who owned the place, George Latham, was a retired produce warehouse worker. Widow. No kids. Not many visitors. It was his old co-worker from the county co-op, Frank Garland, who made the call. Said he hadn't heard from George in 8 days, and when he drove by, the mail was stacked up and his dog wouldn't stop barking behind the door. When they pulled up, Frank was waiting at the end of the driveway, sweating through his hat and looking nervous. "He ain't like this, I'm telling you," Frank muttered. Even after his wife passed, he always came to Thursday coffee. Always. Something's not right. Eli nodded and approached the house, knocking hard on the screen door. The dog barked louder, frantic. No answer. Marcus circled around back to check the windows. "We're gonna have to breach," Marcus called. "Something smells rank." That was their first warning. The front door wasn't locked. Eli pushed it open slowly. The dog, a wiry mutt with patchy fur, barked once more and then scurried past them and out into the yard. "George?" Eli called. "Sheriff's office coming in." The smell hit them immediately. "Jesus," Marcus said, covering his nose. "Smells like death in here." The inside of the house looked like a tomb, sealed and stewing in its own rot. Trash everywhere. Food containers stacked on the counter. There were flies, hundreds, swarming the windows. On the coffee table, half a sandwich had turned green with mold. "Back room," Eli said, pointing toward the hallway. "Let's clear it." They moved slow, professional, weapons drawn. The bedroom door was partially shut. Eli went first. He nudged it open with the toe of his boot. And that's when time stopped. Inside the room were 3 bodies. An elderly man slumped in a chair near the bed, his face sunken and gray. A woman middle-aged, curled on the mattress under a dirty blanket. And beside her... "Oh no," Eli breathed. "Oh my God," was a small child, a baby, maybe 2 years old, dressed in what had once been a pink onesie. All 3 were dead. The woman had a syringe still tucked in her arm. The man's belt was wrapped around his forearm. The baby looked like she had simply wasted away. Her little body was frail and bloated, her skin a pale blue-gray, lips chapped and split open. But what haunted Eli the most, what he couldn't explain, was the way the baby's eyes were open. "Back out," Marcus choked. "We need to back out. Call it in." Eli didn't move. Not right away. He stood there staring as a fat roach crawled across the woman's arm and disappeared under the baby's neck. He saw flies landing on the infant's lips, crawling inside. Something in him broke. Eli stumbled out the front door and vomited in the yard. Frank was pacing now, panic in his eyes. "What's in there? Is George okay?" Eli didn't answer. The coroner's report later said the mother and the older man, her father, had both overdosed within hours of each other. Heroin laced with fentanyl. George had probably let his daughter and granddaughter move in after she lost her job. Records showed she'd filled a prescription for oxycodone 6 months earlier after a car accident. It all spiraled from there. The baby had likely died of dehydration and starvation. Eli found a journal later that night when they were combing through the house. Just a few entries written in shaky pen. "I don't know what day it is. I think Hope is sick. She won't eat. I can't wake up, Daddy. I don't think I can stay awake either." It was signed with a heart and the name Katie. That's when Eli started having the dreams. At first they were flashes. The baby standing at the foot of his bed. Her eyes gone. Her mouth open, like she was still crying, but there was no sound. Then he'd wake up to the sound of a baby wailing in the distance, except he lived alone. No neighbors with kids. Sometimes it would be the smell. That sickly sweet rot that he thought he'd only ever smell again in his nightmares. But it would drift into his kitchen, into his car, into his locker at work. Then came the worst one. The dream where the baby was crying in his arms, and when he looked down, he realized her mouth was full of flies. and when he tried to scream, they flew out of his mouth. Marcus transferred out of patrol 6 months later. Desk job. Eli stayed, tried to be strong, but the drinking started creeping in. 1 beer after shift turned into 4. Therapy helped some, but not always. What helped the most was when he started speaking at recovery centers, talking about what opioids really do, not just to users, but to everyone who loves them. "It's not just a high," he told a group once, "it's a slow fire, and sometimes you only see the smoke when it's already too late." Last month, I had a drink with Eli at the VFW bar. He doesn't talk about the baby much anymore. But that night, unprompted, he said, "You know what haunts me the most? It's not the bodies, it's not even the smell. It's that she still cries in my dreams, like she's asking why nobody came sooner." He looked down into his beer, and I don't have an answer. No one in Cypress County talks about Marigold Hollow anymore. The house was condemned and bulldozed 6 months after the discovery. But they say if you drive past the empty lot on a humid summer night, with your windows down, you might hear something. A baby, still crying, as if she never stopped. It started with a shift like any other. Officer Daniel Hayes, 31, had been with the Jasper County Sheriff's Department for 6 years. He was known among his colleagues for keeping a level head, trusting his instincts, and treating every call with the same gravity, whether it was a barking dog or a double homicide. He didn't get bored, he didn't get cocky, and he definitely didn't scare easy. That night, a Thursday in late September, had been quiet. Southwood, Georgia, where he patrolled, wasn't known for excitement. The county had its share of domestic calls, meth labs in the woods, and the occasional drunken brawl, but violent crime was low. People locked their doors, waved at their neighbors, and mostly kept to themselves. Hayes had just stopped by the Waffle Shack off Route 9 for his usual black coffee refill when the dispatch crackled in. Dispatch. Unit 7B, possible B&E in progress. Caller states a rear window appears to be broken. Female caller says she's alone. No sign of theft. Now reports hearing footsteps downstairs while she's upstairs. Call disconnected mid-sentence. Caller is a Grace Miller, 24. Address is 3196 Mulberry Lane. Backup is en route. Hayes stood still for a second, the to-go cup burning in his palm. "Copy, en route," he replied. He tossed the coffee and walked briskly to his cruiser. Grace Miller. The name wasn't familiar, but Mulberry Lane was. It was one of those tucked-away neighborhoods. Quiet cul-de-sac, dense trees behind every house, one way in and out. A contractor had thrown the homes up about a decade back, all cookie-cutter starter homes. Renters, new graduates, single professionals, sometimes retirees. As he turned onto Mulberry, Hayes mentally reviewed the details again. Young woman, home alone. Broken window, thought she was safe. Then footsteps, then silence. Then the call cut out. It was about 9:34 p.m. when Hayes pulled up to the curb. The house, 3196, looked like all the others. Porch light on, one car in the drive, no movement inside, all curtains drawn. He approached the front door, knocked twice, waited. No answer. Another 2 knocks, this time with the back of his fist. "Jasper County Sheriff's Office. Miss Miller, it's Officer Hayes. You called about a break-in?" Still nothing. He rang the bell, waited, rang again. That gnawing feeling crept into his gut, the kind you don't ignore. He stepped off the porch and walked the perimeter. Around back, past the flower bed, he spotted it. Glass shards below a ground floor window that had clearly been forced in. It wasn't even subtle. Someone had taken a rock or elbow to the pane. Flashlight out, Hayes peered inside. A narrow kitchen, linoleum floor, small dining set. Silent, no obvious movement. "Dispatch, I've got a confirmed point of entry, broken rear window. No response at the door. I'm entering the property now." 10-4. Units 9C and 3A are 5 minutes out. Hayes took a breath, slid his flashlight into his offhand and climbed in through the window. His boots crunched as he stepped onto the scattered glass. He drew his sidearm low, flashlight sweeping across the dark kitchen. Fridge hum. Nothing else. "Miss Miller, Officer Hayes, if you're here, call out." No response. He moved carefully through the house, clearing corners. Living room, hall closet, laundry nook. Nothing, no movement, no sound, just still. But if she was upstairs when she called, he needed to get up there. The stairs creaked under his weight as he ascended. His heart rate didn't spike, but the back of his neck felt tight. He wasn't panicked, he was focused. At the top of the stairs were 3 doors, one slightly ajar. A soft glow of moonlight filtered through that room. "Miss Miller?" A soft voice replied. "Yes?" Hayes stepped forward, pushing the door open with his foot, gun lowered but ready. Grace Miller sat on her bed, knees pulled up, blanket around her shoulders. Her hair was pulled back messily, and her face looked drawn, pale. Her eyes glistened like she'd been crying. "You okay?" he asked, voice low. She nodded slowly. "Your call cut off," he continued. "Dispatch couldn't reach you. Why didn't you answer?" She hesitated. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "No one's here." There was something in her tone that didn't sit right. Not the words, but how she said them. He didn't rush. He looked around the room slowly. Shadows pooled in the corners. Closet door closed. Dusty bookshelf. One window cracked slightly for air. He looked back at Grace and made a subtle gesture toward the closet. She barely shook her head. Number he pointed under the bed. She swallowed hard. "Yes." Hayes didn't flinch. "Ma'am," he said clearly, "I need you to come sign this form so I can close the call." She blinked, confused at first. Then she understood. She stood shakily, the blanket sliding from her shoulders, and walked toward him. As she stepped into the hallway, Hayes spun, shoved her behind him and into the wall, and shouted, "Come out from under the bed, hands first, do it now." Silence, then movement, a rustle. Then slowly, fingers, hands. A man's body in black sweatpants and a dark hoodie slithered from under the bed like a snake. Hayes leveled his weapon. "Hands where I can see them. Palms up." The man complied, rising to his knees. "Drop the weapon." A second passed. Clank. Something metal hit the hardwood floor. The man was older than Hayes expected. 40s maybe. Gaunt face, gray stubble, eyes bloodshot. His hands were shaking. Grace whimpered behind Hayes. "Stay behind me," Hayes barked. The man said nothing as Hayes cuffed him. His wrists were bony and cold. Just as he walked the suspect down the stairs, the backup cruisers pulled up outside. Later, after the dust settled, Grace gave her statement. She had come home from work around 8 p.m. and found the broken window. She panicked, walked through the house but didn't see anything missing. She'd started to relax. Maybe it was kids. She called the police. Then upstairs, just as she sat down to watch TV, she heard the stairs creak. Footsteps, then silence. She didn't know what to do. She whispered to the dispatcher, but then she heard the bedroom door open behind her. A man with a gun told her not to scream, told her to hang up, told her to lie. He made her sit. Quiet. Wait for the cops to leave. If they left. If she made a sound, he said, he'd shoot her first. That night haunted Hayes, not because of what did happen, but what almost did. Had he walked back to the cruiser instead of going in? Had he not picked up on her voice? Had she cracked? That man had zip ties, duct tape, and a loaded 9mm. They found 2 previous home invasion charges on his record from another state. One ended in assault. The other? Worse. Grace Miller moved a month later. New town, new locks, new life. Hayes still thinks about her every September, still remembers the way she didn't scream, the way she answered, yes, from the dark. The badge doesn't make you brave. It just gives you the choice. To knock, To enter, to trust your gut, to act, or not. And sometimes, that's all that saves someone, even if you never sleep quite the same again. I had just clocked into my overnight shift, the kind that drags from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. on a bone-chilling Friday night in early March. The kind of shift where your hands go numb the second you step outside your squad car, and every shadow looks a little longer than it should. My name's Officer Ryan Morales, 36 years old, been with the Chicago Police Department for just over a decade. I patrol mostly on the south side, Englewood, Auburn, Gresham, Washington Park, places where people keep their heads low and doors locked, not just because of crime, but because sometimes the night carries something worse. I was partnered with Officer Denise Carter that night. Solid cop, mid-40s, had this calm, unshakable demeanor that made her the perfect person to have riding shotgun. We'd been partnered up for a few months now, long enough to read each other's body language without a word. The shift had started like most do, calls about loud music, a minor domestic, a kid with a stolen scooter. But somewhere around 11:40 p.m., dispatch crackled in our ear with something that immediately changed the tone of our night. Unit 82 Baker, report of a suspicious female, late 40s to early 50s, long dark hair, possibly under the influence. Caller states she's going house to house on South Halsted near 72nd, banging on doors and yelling through doorbell cameras. Caller believes she may be armed. Proceed with caution. Denise glanced over at me. That's your kind of weird. I sighed and threw on the lights. Why is it always my kind of weird? We headed east, and by the time we arrived at the caller's location, a modest brick home tucked between two boarded-up properties, it was just after midnight. The man who answered the door, Mr. Terrence Wyatt, looked shaken, clutching his phone like it was his last lifeline. "She's not right," he said, ushering us inside. She looked at the camera for a long time, then started talking into it, like she was talking to someone behind me. He played back the Ring camera footage on his phone. There she was, thin woman, maybe 5 feet 7 inches, wiry black hair streaked with gray, heavy bags under her eyes. She stepped up to the porch and stared directly into the lens. For nearly 30 seconds, she didn't blink. Just stood there, as if studying whoever might be watching. Then she smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was wide, cracked, unsettling. She pressed the doorbell and spoke, but her voice was rasped and choppy, like her vocal cords had been damaged. "Open up. I need blood." Mr. Wyatt's voice came through the speaker. "Ma'am, you need to leave my property. I'm calling the police." She chuckled. "Open up. I need blood. She's hungry." "Who's she?" More laughter. Then she lunged at the camera, trying to rip it off the wall. Mr. Wyatt flinched, just watching it. "Was she holding anything?" I asked. "Not that I could see," he said, "but she had something behind her back." Never took her hands out. We thanked him and stepped outside. Other units, 83 Baker and 92 Charles, had already begun canvassing. We joined in, lights off, moving slowly down 72nd Street. At 12:27 a.m., a new call came in. Unit 82 Baker, report of a possible home invasion in progress. Caller on South Morgan says a woman matching the same description entered their home through an unlocked front door. Caller and spouse are hiding upstairs. Caller states woman may be armed and bleeding. I hit the lights. We're 5 blocks out. We were first on scene. Another unit arrived moments later. The house, a 2-story with a chain-link fence and busted porch light, had its front door cracked slightly open. We drew our weapons and entered. "CPD, come out with your hands up." The foyer was empty, dimly lit. A few family photos lined the walls. From upstairs, a man's voice shouted, "We're in the bedroom, she's still in the house." "Sir, stay where you are," Denise yelled up. "We're coming to you." We ascended carefully. My heart was pounding, my fingers tightening around the grip of my Glock. We reached the top and moved toward the master bedroom, where the husband, Daniel Fields, opened the door, panic-stricken. His wife, Marissa, was curled up on the floor behind the bed, holding their phone in a death grip. She came in mumbling about blood, he whispered. Tried the bedroom door. We locked it just in time. Did you hear her leave? Number, we've been silent up here. That meant she was still inside. We checked the hallway. The last room on the left, a child's bedroom, was pitch black. The door was cracked just enough to feel wrong. Then came the sound, a low, wheezy cackle. I exchanged a glance with Denise. She nodded, and I nudged the door open with my boot. Inside, I flicked on the light. The woman was sitting cross-legged on the child's bed, smiling wide. A large kitchen knife lay in her lap, stained with blood. Her right wrist had a deep, self-inflicted gash. Blood soaked the mattress and sheets beneath her. Nestled between her legs was a small plastic doll, maybe 2 feet tall, its hair matted with blood. I need blood, she whispered. She's still hungry. Denise raised her weapon. Ma'am, drop the knife. The woman looked up at us slowly, eyes glassy. Not mine this time, I already gave mine. I tried to reason with her. What's your name? I asked gently. Let us help you. No one has to get hurt. She's not me, the woman murmured. She's inside the doll. She wants yours now. I swear to God that doll's eyes looked wet. She gripped the knife tighter. I trained my sights just above her wrist, debating whether I could disarm her safely. Then she lunged, knife raised. Animal growl. I fired. 2 shots. One into her upper right arm, another into the forearm. She screamed, crumpling sideways. The blade clattered to the floor. We secured her in cuffs, and Denise radioed for EMS. The woman was still conscious, whimpering, clutching her bleeding arm. She told me to do it. She kept repeating. She told me to get blood. For her. When the paramedics arrived, they stabilized her and transported her to St. Bernard Hospital. We later learned her name was Eloise Carver, 49 years old, transient, known to hospitals around the city for psychiatric episodes. She had been off her medication for months, and the doll she carried was tied to her daughter, who had died in a house fire years earlier. Eloise had survived but suffered traumatic brain injuries and psychotic breaks thereafter. The blood was her own. She was declared not guilty by reason of insanity, and now resides in the Dunning Mental Health Center under strict supervision. But that night, that hour, still haunts me. Not because I shot someone. I've drawn my weapon before, but because when I looked in her eyes, those distant, fractured eyes, I didn't see rage or even fear. I saw obedience, like something was truly telling her what to do. And as I bagged that blood-soaked doll for evidence, I could swear it was smiling too. It started on a Thursday night. I remember because I was 2 hours into a long shift and already regretting the energy drink I'd chugged before roll call. My name's Officer Jamie Conrad, State Patrol, assigned to the rural sector of western Missouri. At the time, I was 5 years into the job, mostly covering the late shift between mile markers 240 and 280 on I-70. We call it the Long Nothing. Miles of cracked pavement, occasional overpasses, and patches of thick trees that could hide anything and anyone. No towns, no gas stations for 30 miles either way. If something happens out here, it's usually hours before someone notices. But that night, something noticed me first. The shift had been uneventful. I clocked a guy doing 91 and a 70 earlier, got a written warning, nothing serious. Then around 2:15 a.m., I pulled off the highway near an old, out-of-service fueling station just west of Claymore. You know the type. Shattered windows, graffiti, half the roof caved in from some long-forgotten storm. It wasn't technically on patrol, but I sometimes parked there to eat or catch up on reports in peace. This time, something was different. There were 2 cars already sitting there, parked side by side near the building's shadow. No lights on inside. No one visible behind the windshields. Both vehicles dark, windows tinted. I sat in my cruiser with the engine running, watching for a few seconds. No movement. No signs of a driver coming or going. Weird, I thought, but not immediately suspicious. Truckers sometimes napped here. Still, 2 sedans, no semis, no diesel rigs, just 2 passenger vehicles, didn't sit right. I radioed in my location. Routine stuff. Dispatch confirmed they had nothing on the radar nearby. I stepped out. The air smelled like oil and mold. The sky was pitch black except for the distant flicker of truck headlights on the interstate. My boots crunched over shattered glass as I walked between the 2 cars. Both were mid-2000s models, no plates missing but both unlocked. I tapped the driver's side windows gently with my knuckle. "Highway patrol," I said. "Anyone in there?" Silence. I opened the driver door of the first car. Empty. Backseat too. The second vehicle, same thing. No belongings, no keys, no smell of smoke or food. Just empty cars in the middle of nowhere at 2 a.m. I stepped back and scanned the lot. That's when I heard it. A shuffle behind the gas station building. Faint. Like someone stepping on loose gravel. I reached for my sidearm instinctively. "Hello?" I called out, stepping slowly around the corner. "Highway patrol. You okay back here?" A man popped into view from the other side of the dumpster. Late 20s maybe, wiry building, dark hoodie, jeans, smudged face like he'd been sweating or running. "Oh, thank God," he said, walking toward me fast with his hands up. "Sir, my car won't start. I've been stuck out here for like an hour. I tried the battery and jumper cables, but it's totally dead. Can you help me?" His voice cracked on the last word. I kept a cautious distance. "You the one who parked the silver Camry?" He nodded quickly. "Yeah, that's mine." "And the other car?" "Dunno," he said. "Was already there when I pulled in. Figured someone broke down too." I studied his face. His eyes kept darting behind me. Sweat trickled down his cheek even though the night was cool. "You here alone?" I asked. Yes, sir," he said. "Just me?" "All right," I said slowly. "Pop the hood, I'll take a look, but I'm no mechanic." "Thank you," he said quickly, rushing to his car. He flipped the latch and popped the hood. I stepped in beside him, pretending to inspect the battery while keeping my peripheral vision locked on him. Something about the situation reeked. That's when I saw it. A faint movement behind the second car. Another figure, approaching quietly, something glinting in his hand. Shit. I dropped my hand to my holster and pivoted instantly. "Don't move!" I shouted, drawing my firearm. The figure froze, arm still halfway raised. In his hand, a large hunting knife, smeared with something. "Drop the weapon!" I barked. "Now!" He hesitated, then let the blade clatter to the pavement. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silence. "Hands where I can see 'em. On your knees." The man obeyed. I backed toward the first guy, turning my gun toward him now too. "Hands up! Both of you! Now!" The first man froze. Wait! I didn't do anything." "You move, I drop you," I warned. I called it in. "Dispatch, I need immediate backup. 2 suspects at my location, 1 armed. I've got them at gunpoint." Tension hummed like power lines in the air. My heart beat so loud I couldn't hear the wind. Backup arrived 7 minutes later, lights flashing down the empty interstate like salvation. We cuffed both suspects. The knife carrier had dried blood under his nails. Neither had ID. We searched both cars. Empty trunks, clean interiors. No blood, no drugs, nothing. But behind the station, behind the dumpster and a rusted fence, we found it. 2 large black contractor bags. They were leaking. I didn't want to open them, but I had to. Inside were human remains. Disarticulated. Wrapped in blood-soaked plastic. The stench hit us like a wall. I nearly threw up. A shovel lay beside them. Fresh dirt had been disturbed along the tree line. They were digging graves when I arrived. The plan was simple. Dump the bodies, bury them in the woods behind the station, then leave in separate cars. Maybe torch one later. They weren't expecting a state trooper to randomly stop there. They also weren't smart. They parked next to each other, stayed nearby, didn't leave a lookout. Both suspects were charged with double homicide. Turns out the victims were reported missing 3 days earlier, roommates from Kansas City. The motive was robbery. The killers had known them, lured them into a party, then killed them in a basement, tried to cover it up, tried to disappear. They almost got away with it. Almost. I think about that night more often than I admit. It could have ended differently. If I hadn't noticed the cars, if I hadn't turned around in time, if I hadn't drawn my gun fast enough, my fiancée, now my wife, held me for an hour when I got home the next morning. I didn't even take off my uniform before collapsing into bed. It took weeks before I could sleep through the night again. You learn early on in this job, evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it looks like a young man in a hoodie asking for help under a dead gas station light. Sometimes it parks beside you, smiling politely with blood still drying under its fingernails. In the dim orange haze of the streetlight, the call came through. It was 2:11 a.m., a Wednesday morning on the tail end of October. The chill in the air was biting, even under my uniform jacket. I'd just pulled into the small gas station off Route 27 to grab a black coffee and stretch my legs when my radio crackled. Unit 37, respond to a possible disturbance. 74 Windmere Drive. Neighbor reports a female screaming. No known weapons. Caller states the resident lives alone. I tossed the coffee back on the counter, nodded to the clerk, and responded. Unit 37 en route. The coffee could wait. I pulled back onto the road, flipping on my lights, but not the siren. No need to wake the whole block if it turned out to be nothing more than a drunk couple yelling over spilled wine. But it never felt like one of those calls. It was the silence around the dispatch that stuck with me. I'd only been working nights in Leland County for 2 years, but you learn quickly. When a dispatcher's voice is flat, you listen closer. It means they're trying not to show concern. Windmere Drive was a quiet road just past the high school. Mostly middle-income homes. Fenced yards, porch lights left on. People who took pride in shoveling their sidewalks before the sun came up. Not much happened there, at least not on the surface. The house at 74 sat dark when I pulled up. No porch light, no lights in the windows, but a dark blue Honda Odyssey was parked in the narrow driveway. I double-checked the address, then double-checked again. As I stepped out of the cruiser, a porch light flicked on across the street. A man, maybe early 60s, in flannel pajama pants and a white tee, shuffled out and waved me over. "I'm the one who called," he said, his voice a nervous rasp. "About 10 minutes ago. I was in the kitchen and I heard it, a scream. Just one, but loud. Blood-curdling kind, like someone was dying. Came from that house right there." He pointed across the street. "Number 74. There's a woman who lives there, real quiet. Keeps to herself mostly. Sometimes she has that guy over, boyfriend I think, but I haven't seen his car tonight." "You hear anything else?" I asked. He shook his head. "Just the scream, then nothing." I nodded. "Go on back inside. Keep your doors locked just in case." He obeyed without hesitation. I turned my attention back to the house. Still no lights. I walked up the porch steps and knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, harder. Still silence. I checked the doorknob. Locked. I radioed in. "Dispatch 37, arrived on scene. No response at front door. Vehicle present. Requesting secondary unit for welfare check, possible forced entry." "Copy, Unit 37. Unit 12 en route, ETA 6 minutes. I circled the house, checking every window. Most were shut tight, except one in the back, slid open about 2 feet. No screen, no visible damage. Just open. The backyard was fenced, a small porch leading to that open window. I felt the hairs on my arms stand up. This wasn't right. I waited a beat, listening. Nothing. Not even a dog barked. I radioed again. "Possible point of entry. We'll be investigating interior, holding until backup arrives. Then I paused. Something in my gut twisted. What if she's bleeding out right now? What if that 6 minutes is the difference? I pulled my flashlight, pushed the window fully up, and climbed inside. I landed in the kitchen, clean, well kept. Small dishes in the drying rack. A lavender candle burned low on the counter, nearly out. The air smelled faintly like vanilla and something metallic. Blood. I flicked on the kitchen light and moved room to room, calling out, "Leland Sheriff's Department. If anyone's here, make yourself known." No answer. Living room. Empty. Den. Empty. I unlocked the front door in case backup arrived, then stared at the staircase. It curved slightly, leading to the second floor. Carpeted. Quiet. I wanted to wait. Every training instinct said wait for backup. But I also knew the silence in the house didn't feel empty. It felt like it was holding its breath. Step by step I climbed. 4 doors, 2 on each side. "Sheriff's Department," I called again, louder this time. "Ma'am, if you're here and need help, please respond." Still nothing. Then, a soft creak. It came from the last door on the left. I turned the knob slowly and opened it. A bedroom. Clean. Neat. Queen-sized bed with light gray comforter. A figure lay in the bed facing away from me. Hair splayed on the pillow. Relief tried to creep in, but then I saw it. A stain on the comforter, dark and soaked through. I moved in, heart thumping hard enough to hear it. She was breathing. Barely. The knife wounds were along her side and lower back. It was amazing she'd survived this long. "Dispatch Unit 37, I've got a live victim. Multiple stab wounds. Female, early 30s. Request EMS now. Possible internal bleeding. Still breathing." As I relayed her condition, something twisted in me. A memory. The creak. She couldn't have made that sound. Not in this condition. So who did? My eyes scanned the room. The closet door was closed. I approached it with my weapon drawn and heart pounding in my throat. Counted to 3. Yanked it open. Empty. I turned, scanning again. The bed. I dropped to my knees, lifted the cover at the bottom, and there he was. Face half covered in a black cloth mask, eyes locked with mine. I shouted, "Show me your hands!" And the man slowly complied, raising them as best he could. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. I kept my weapon trained on him and ordered, "Out." Slowly, the man slithered from under the bed, hands up, until he stood in the corner. I didn't move to cuff him. Not alone. He could have a second weapon, and if he lunged, it would be too fast. "Unit 12, I've got the suspect in custody at gunpoint. Send officers up when you enter." 2 minutes later, my backup officers entered and took over. We got him cuffed. Got her to the hospital. She lived. 6 stab wounds. 1 collapsed lung. Defensive cuts along both forearms. The surgeon said another 3 minutes and she'd have bled out. Her name was Elise Rourke. 32. School counselor. He was her boyfriend. Ex, as of earlier that night. Daniel Keene. He'd found out she'd been seeing someone else. They argued over the phone. She ended it. And he couldn't accept it. He let himself into the house with the spare key he still had. Waited. Confronted her when she came out of the shower. And when she tried to run, he stabbed her. Then tucked her back into bed like she was already dead. And hid under it. Waiting for whatever came next. He told us later he thought about killing himself. But didn't. Maybe he wanted to see who would find her. Or maybe he just wanted to watch it all unfold. I sat in my cruiser after the scene cleared. 5:42 a.m. The sun had just started to rise. The horror of it wasn't in the blood or the crime scene photos, or even the arrest. It was in the silence. The wait. The moment I lifted that bed skirt and came face to face with a man who didn't plan on being found alive. If I'd waited 6 more minutes, if I'd missed that creak, if he'd lunged, I replayed the possibilities like a movie on loop for weeks. That's the part they don't train you for. The guessing game. The almost. Elise recovered, moved out of Leland County, changed her number. Daniel was sentenced to 25 years with no parole. The courtroom was quiet when the verdict came. Elise didn't testify. She didn't need to. Her scars were enough. They tell you this job's mostly boredom, paperwork, and broken taillights. But sometimes it's a scream in the night. Sometimes it's a man hiding under a bed. And sometimes the difference between life and death is just one cop refusing to wait. In a small city like Bluefield, the nights are usually quiet. There's the occasional DUI or domestic dispute, but nothing too wild. Nothing like the cities on the coast. It's mostly retired folks, some college kids, and a mix of working-class families just trying to make it. That's why Officer Isaac Malone never expected anything more than paperwork and routine checks when he started the night shift 3 years ago. Isaac had served 2 tours in the Army before deciding to join the police department. He was calm, sharp, and built like a linebacker, but with the patience of a monk. His partner, Corporal Devin Rhodes, was 10 years older and a lifer in the department. They trusted each other completely. No drama, no ego. Just 2 officers working the graveyard shift, trying to make sure nothing crazy happened on their watch. It was mid-October, a cold Thursday night around 1:30 a.m., when dispatch sent them out to the Pine Hill Estates, an aging apartment complex off Maple Run Road. The call was vague. Tenant disturbance, water damage, landlord requests welfare check. Sounded like a busted pipe or some guy on a bender who left the tub running. Isaac glanced over at Devin as they cruised through the empty streets. "You think it's going to be like the last one?" he asked. "Guy passed out in the shower for 4 hours?" Devin smirked. "God, I hope not. I don't need another naked dude tonight." They chuckled lightly, unaware of what they were driving into. Pine Hill Estates was one of those places that had seen better days. Built in the late 70s, it used to house local mill workers. Now, it was mostly low-income tenants, subsidized housing, and a few reclusive loners. The landlord, Mr. Roper, was a cranky Vietnam vet in his 70s who practically lived in the office downstairs. When Isaac and Devin pulled in, something immediately felt off. The parking lot was lit by flickering floodlights, casting long shadows over the cracked pavement. But more unsettling was the crowd gathered outside. Around 20 tenants, wrapped in robes and jackets, stood in the dead grass between buildings. A few smoked nervously. A couple held crying kids. All of them stared toward the second-floor window of apartment 2B, where water trickled steadily from the light fixture above the door. Mr. Roper flagged them down, his ball cap soaked from the leaking roof. "It's Adam," he grunted. "He's up there flooding the whole damn building. Nobody's seen him come out since yesterday afternoon. He's not answering the door." "Adam who?" Devin asked. "Adam Lyles. Lives alone, mid-30s, bit off, keeps to himself mostly. But lately, he's been talking to himself. Told the guy in 2C there were voices in the walls. Thought he was high, but now..." He gestured helplessly at the water pouring down the staircase. They climbed the steps slowly, water rushing under their boots like a broken dam. Every step squelched. When they reached apartment 2B, they knocked hard. "Bluefield Police, Adam, open the door." No answer. They knocked again, louder this time. Isaac pressed his ear to the door. Silence. "You smell that?" Devin muttered. Isaac sniffed. Mildew, wet wood, and something else. Metallic. Like rust. Or blood. "Back up," Devin said, nodding toward the hallway. Isaac took a step back, and with one hard kick, Devin cracked the door open. The moment it gave way, a wall of steam rushed out. Water had soaked every inch of the carpet, and the wallpaper peeled like old skin. It was like walking into a sauna. And in the middle of the chaos stood Adam. He was barefoot, wearing nothing but boxers and a soaking white undershirt. His hands trembled at his sides. His eyes, wide, bloodshot, and unblinking, stared past the officers like they weren't even there. "Adam?" Isaac said gently, stepping forward. "We're here to help. Can you talk to me?" Adam's lips moved, barely audible over the sound of gushing water. "There's people in the walls." Isaac leaned closer. What was that? Adam's head snapped to him like a puppet. "There's people in the walls," he whispered. "They're watching me, listening. I can hear them crawling. They're in here. I turned on the water to get them out." Devin moved toward the bathroom to shut off the water. Every faucet was open, the tub overflowing. Even the toilet bowl bubbled like a boiling pot. He turned each one off and called to Isaac. "Clear in here. Check the back." Isaac gently put a hand on Adam's shoulder. "You're safe now, okay? Let's just step outside." But Adam pulled away violently. "No, they're still here. You don't understand. They live in the walls." Devin was already moving into the bedroom. One more room. That's when everything changed. Inside the bedroom, everything looked off. The bed was stripped. The mattress leaned against the wall. Dozens of empty water bottles were stacked in a pyramid beside the dresser. But it was the closet that caught Devin's eye. Something was wrong. There was a faint line along the drywall, a perfect rectangle like someone had traced the shape of a hidden door. No handle, just a faint seam. Then came a sound, a shuffle, light and quick like someone adjusting their foot. Devin's blood ran cold. He radioed Isaac. "I need you in here. Now." Isaac entered, still keeping Adam in his peripheral vision. "What is it?" Devin pointed at the wall with his flashlight. "That's a door." "No way," Isaac muttered. "That's sealed. Probably drywall." Devin stepped forward and tapped it with his knuckle. Hollow. He exchanged a glance with Isaac. Both drew their sidearms. "Bluefield Police," Devin called out. "If anyone's in there, come out with your hands visible." Silence. Then, another scuffing sound, unmistakable this time. Without hesitation, Devin reached forward and pressed against the panel. It gave way. The drywall creaked open like a crude door on a hinge, revealing a cavity between the bedroom and the bathroom wall, no more than 2 feet deep. Inside were 3 people, a man and 2 women, covered in grime and face paint. Their eyes were wide and feral. The man held a knife, but dropped it as the flashlight hit him full force. The stench coming from the crawl space was unbearable. Urine, mold, body odor, something rotting. Isaac shouted, "Down! Hands on your heads," while Devin covered them. To their surprise, the 3 emerged obediently, whispering strange things under their breath. Devin cuffed them one by one as Isaac radioed for backup. Adam had collapsed into the corner, sobbing. Back at the precinct, things only got more bizarre. The 3 suspects were completely uncooperative. They gave only first names, Mira, Jonah, and Sky, but no ID, no background, no clear origin. Their fingerprints didn't match anything in the system. One of the women kept chanting something under her breath, over and over, "The walls remember, the walls remember." An investigator from the county arrived the next day and uncovered something chilling. These 3 were part of a fringe cult living on the outskirts of the Blue Ridge Forest. The group had disbanded after a raid in 2018, but some members vanished. They were obsessed with reclaiming the in-between, spaces between floors, behind walls, under stairs. Adam, it turned out, had once been part of their group before suffering a mental break. He'd left, started therapy, even got medicated, but someone must have tipped them off. They'd returned for him. They had slipped into his apartment through an old access panel in the boiler room and carved out a hiding place inside his walls. They lived there for nearly 2 weeks, eating, sleeping, watching, and whispering. They whispered to him through the vents, moved behind the drywall, scraped at night when he slept. He thought he was going crazy again. The water was his only defense. It was his flood, a way to flush them out. Adam was placed under psychiatric care but was expected to recover. The three cultists were charged with trespassing, stalking, and unlawful confinement, among other charges. They never admitted to what they'd done, but one of them smiled in court when the charges were read. Isaac and Devin? They took a few weeks off. I still hear it sometimes, Devin said one night on the back patio of the precinct, when it's quiet enough, scratching, like someone trying to find a way in. Isaac didn't respond. He just stared at the wall behind him. The same kind of drywall as Adam's apartment. Think we got 'em all? He finally asked. Devin looked at him, tired and unsure. I don't know, man. I don't know. I never believed in ghost stories, not until that night. Even now, years later, I can't pass a boarded-up building without getting goosebumps. Back then, I was a patrol officer in Bay Bridge, New Jersey, a small riverfront town with big city problems. Crime was high, morale was low, and our department was always stretched thin. Car thefts, assaults, home invasions. It was routine. You stop reacting after a while. You go numb. But there are calls you don't forget. Calls that change something in you. And for me, that call came on a cold Wednesday night in November. It was just after 1 a.m. I'd parked under a broken street lamp outside a closed Dunkin' to finish a stale ham sandwich and do some paperwork. Dispatch crackled through my radio, cutting through the silence. Unit 14, we've got a report of trespassing at the old Marrow estate. Caller says he saw flashlights moving around on the second floor. I paused. Repeat that. Did you say the Marrow estate? Affirmative. 52 Riverview Road. That big abandoned property by the river. Neighbors keep complaining. You're the closest. Lucky me. Everyone in Bay Bridge knew the Marrow estate, a decaying Victorian mansion that had once belonged to industrialist Charles Marrow and his family. It had been empty since the mid-70s. Word was the county couldn't afford to tear it down, and the place had become a magnet for squatters, teens, and drifters. Locals swore it was haunted, whispered about kids who went in and never came out. I chalked it up to urban legends, but I also knew I'd be going in alone until backup arrived. I clicked my radio. Copy. I'm en route. The house sat like a corpse, lifeless and cold at the edge of the river. The driveway was cracked, grass growing through its bones. My headlights swept over the house's peeling white paint, busted shutters, and broken porch railings. A rusted no trespassing sign hung sideways on the fence. I killed the engine and stepped out, every crunch of gravel under my boots louder than it should have been. I radioed in. Unit 14 on scene, requesting backup for a suspected trespasser inside 52 Riverview. Acknowledged. Nearest unit is 15 minutes out. Of course. I looked up and saw it. A flicker of light in a second-floor window, then darkness. I don't know why, but something in my gut twisted. That wasn't a kid's flashlight beam. It didn't move like one. It was still, controlled. I made my way around the fence and found a gap near the side where the boards had been pried loose. I unholstered my flashlight, drew my sidearm, and stepped into the yard. The side window had been smashed in. Jagged glass lined the sill like teeth. I announced myself loudly. Bay Bridge PD. Anyone inside, announce yourself now. Nothing. I ducked through the opening and entered what was once a dining room. My boots crunched over debris, fallen plaster, broken furniture, the remnants of squatters. The air smelled of mold, piss, and age. I swept my flashlight across the room and down the dark hallway. The beam trembled slightly. My hand wasn't steady. PD, I said again, louder. Come out now. You're trespassing on county property. A sudden clunk echoed from above. Like something heavy dropping onto floorboards, I tensed. Sound came from the second floor. I radioed quietly. Proceeding to investigate. The staircase was warped and missing 2 steps near the middle. I had to cross them carefully, 1 foot braced against the banister. As I reached the landing, another sound came, dragging. A long scrape like wood over wood. Then silence. The hallway was pitch black. The walls were lined with cracked picture frames and moldy wallpaper. Doors lined both sides. My flashlight bounced across each one until it stopped at the third door on the left. It was cracked open just slightly. I raised my voice. "Baybridge PD, come out now with your hands up." No response. I nudged the door open with my foot. The room was empty. Rotting mattress, old dresser tipped over, trash bags. No signs of recent use. But something felt off, like I'd interrupted something. That's when I noticed it. A single red handprint on the window glass. Fresh. I turned quickly. Nothing. The radio crackled. "Unit 14. ETA for backup is now 7 minutes." I exhaled. "Copy." Then another noise. Footsteps above me. There was an attic. I found the ladder behind a narrow door at the end of the hall. It looked unstable, but I had no choice. I climbed slowly, flashlight clenched in my teeth, gun in hand. The attic was one large open space, exposed beams, cobwebs, and a single busted trunk in the corner, and 3 figures. Standing. Still. In the far corner, facing the wall. I froze. My flashlight hit the first figure. It was a mannequin. So was the second, and the third. But they'd been positioned. Hunched shoulders, bent heads, hands lifted slightly, as if listening. All facing the wall like they were being punished. I stepped back. That's when the attic door slammed shut beneath me. I ran back to the door and yanked it. It wouldn't budge. "Dispatch, this is Unit 14. I'm inside the Marrow House. Door just closed behind me. Request immediate backup and possible building search." "Copy. Additional unit en route. Are you injured?" "Negative. Just locked in." The attic grew colder. I saw my breath. A faint creaking echoed from behind me. I turned. The mannequins had moved. They were all now facing me. My heart pounded in my chest. "This isn't funny," I muttered, backing toward the trap door. Then I heard something whisper from the far end of the attic, not through the radio, not in my head. A real whisper, like someone crouched just beneath hearing. "He's here." I didn't wait. I drew my baton and smashed the attic window, clearing enough glass to get out. I hoisted myself halfway through, then stopped. There was someone on the roof, facing away from me, crouched on the shingles, pale skin, bald head, just squatting there. I slid back inside, heart in my throat. Then, crash, the attic door burst open. Officer Lang and his partner appeared, guns raised. "Tomlinson, you okay?" I nodded too fast. "We need to get out, something's not right here." They exchanged looks but helped me down. We decided to clear the house together. With 3 of us, it felt safer until we got to the first floor again. Lang stopped. "Did you see that?" I turned. "See what?" There was someone standing at that window. We rushed to the room. Nothing there. But outside, in the moonlight by the river, were footprints in the frost-covered grass. Bare feet, walking away from the house, but no signs of entry. We followed them until they stopped, abruptly. No turn, no departure, just ended. Lang looked at me, whispering, "Where'd they go?" We searched another 20 minutes. Found nothing. No squatters, no signs of recent habitation. But something didn't sit right. We reported it as unfounded trespassing. Closed the building back up, sealed the fence. Lang patted me on the back as we walked to our cruisers. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't answer. But in my rearview mirror, as I pulled out, I could have sworn I saw someone standing in the attic window, just watching. I put in for a transfer 3 weeks later. Couldn't shake the feeling that I'd brought something back from that place. My nights were restless. My apartment felt occupied. Cold corners, doors creaking. One morning I found a single red handprint on my bathroom mirror, smaller than mine. I scrubbed it away, called in sick, and never returned to that shift. Some houses rot, some houses remember, and some don't want to be alone. I had only been on the force for 7 months when this happened. It was late October. Cold, foggy nights, fewer people out, more time for your mind to wander. I was assigned to the night patrol shift in a small county outside of Hartford, Vermont. Our town didn't get much crime. Most nights it was DUI stops, checking on livestock in the roads and responding to domestic disputes that never turned violent. I was still new, eager, respectful of the badge. I hadn't fired my weapon outside the range. I hadn't seen blood that wasn't from a car crash or a drunk guy hitting his head on a coffee table. And I definitely hadn't been in the situation I was about to walk into. The area I patrolled included a stretch of older rural homes out in the wooded parts of Millridge Township. Most were still lived in by older folks, or rented out to seasonal workers. But a few of the homes had long been abandoned, places left to rot after foreclosure or death or family disputes no one wanted to talk about. One of those homes was a house at the end of Birch Hollow Road, a dirt road that curved off the main highway. Everyone in town called it the Hollander House, though I didn't know why. The place had been empty for at least a decade, maybe more. The windows were caked with dirt, the roof sagged in the middle, and the driveway was always covered in leaves and dead branches. It didn't have power, no running water, no utilities of any kind, yet it still had a working landline. I found that out the hard way. It was a little past 2 a.m., quiet enough to hear your own breathing. Dispatch crackled into my cruiser. Unit 12, possible 911 hang-up from 87 Birch Hollow Road. Caller disconnected before giving any information. You're the closest unit. I blinked at the address. That was the Hollander House. 10-4, I said, flipping on my headlights and making the turn. It was about 6 miles from where I was parked, and the closer I got, the foggier it became. I slowed down when I reached Birch Hollow. The road hadn't been paved in years, and even though I was driving slow, I still heard rocks smacking the undercarriage. When I pulled onto the property, my first instinct was that the call had to be a glitch. There were no lights on, no vehicles. The house was silent and choked in ivy. The porch was caved in on one side. I grabbed my flashlight, clicked it on, and approached slowly. I checked the windows, intact but filthy. I tapped the front door. Nothing. Tried the knob. Locked. I radioed in. Unit 12, no signs of anyone here. House appears vacant and unoccupied. Likely an old line misfire or crossed signal. Returning to patrol. They cleared me. I left. The next night at 2:19 a.m., dispatch radioed again. Unit 12, another 911 call from 87 Birch Hollow. Open line with muffled crying heard before it disconnected. Caller did not speak. No number registered to the house. I just stared at the radio. Are you sure it was the same address? I asked. Affirmative. Same line. No other reports in that area. Please respond with caution. This time my gut clenched a little. I took the same route. The fog seemed thicker tonight. Heavier, like it had been waiting for me. I pulled up to the Hollander House and something immediately felt off. The front door was ajar, just barely, maybe half an inch, but it had been locked the night before. I got out slowly, hand near my holster. I didn't see any fresh tire tracks, still no lights inside, no sounds but the wind through the trees. Dispatch Unit 12, front door is ajar, proceeding to clear interior. Please send backup to location. Copy that. Unit 7 en route, ETA 12 minutes. I drew my weapon and flashlight, stepped onto the porch and nudged the door with my foot. It creaked inward. The smell hit me first, dust, mold, and something faintly metallic. Blood or rust, I couldn't tell. The interior was stripped bare. Old wallpaper hanging in sheets, exposed beams. No furniture. Except there was sound, a faint tone, a soft, steady ee. I followed it through the hall to a door in the kitchen. The basement. The dial tone was coming from down there. I announced myself. Police! If anyone's in here, make yourself known. Nothing. I turned the knob and opened the basement door. Cold air rushed out like a breath from something long dead. I started down, one step at a time, flashlight cutting through the dark. The basement was large, damp, unfinished. Dirt floor, support beams, a lone workbench in the corner. The dial tone got louder. I found the phone. An old corded landline, late 90s style, sitting on the concrete, off the hook. The red speaker button was lit. I picked it up, placed it on the receiver. The tone stopped. Then came a sound that nearly made me drop my flashlight. Laughter, soft, wet, like someone trying not to laugh but doing it anyway. It came from the far corner of the basement. I turned, flashlight snapping to the sound. He was just standing there. A man, maybe in his late 30s, gaunt, greasy hair clinging to his face, dressed in a thin t-shirt and jeans. No shoes, feet blackened from walking barefoot. His left hand was over his mouth, stifling that strange, stuttering laugh. His right hand held a revolver. "Drop the weapon," I shouted. He didn't move, just tilted his head like he was curious, like this was some part of a game I hadn't been told the rules to. Then he lifted the gun, not at me, but to the side of his own temple. I said, "Drop it." He closed his eyes, laughed again. His thumb twitched near the hammer. I fired, 2 quick rounds into his shoulder and forearm. He collapsed, screaming in pain, dropping the revolver. I kicked it away, cuffed him as he howled and sobbed. Upstairs, sirens were finally approaching. I dragged him out, blood trailing behind. His name was Lucas Brentwell. No ID on him, no criminal record. The revolver was unregistered. The house? Still listed under a woman who had died 12 years ago. Lucas's mother, as we later found out. He had been living in the basement off and on for months. No utilities, eating from the woods. He had installed a battery-powered landline adapter, somehow kept that one old phone working, just enough to call 911. His reasoning? I wanted someone to see me before I left. Just someone to know I was real. He'd been planning the suicide for days. The 911 calls weren't cries for help. They were bait. He wanted a witness. It wasn't the smell of the basement. It wasn't the stare on his face. It wasn't even how close I came to dying. The scariest part was how calm he was in the days that followed. He told us everything. Smiled through most of it. Apologized for the mess. Said he was glad I came when I did. That if I hadn't, he'd be just another rotting smell no one found for months. I still patrol Birch Hollow sometimes. The house is still there, still dead. But sometimes when the fog rolls in thick, I swear I see the front door cracked open again. Just a little, like it's waiting for someone new. I had only been on the force for 13 months when I got the call that changed the way I looked at life, death, and everything in between. My name's Officer Lena Hart, a patrol cop for the city of Crest Hill, population 90,000. Quiet place most of the year. I work nights mostly, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and I've learned real fast that darkness brings out the worst in people. Add loneliness, heartbreak, or drugs, and it's a cocktail for disaster. This happened just after the clock sprang forward for daylight savings. It was that kind of weird March night. Too cold to be spring, but too warm for winter. My partner, Officer Daniel Ruiz, and I were finishing up paperwork in the cruiser outside a closed diner when dispatch crackled over the radio. Unit 9B3, 9B4, welfare check requested at 2240 Hawthorne Avenue. RP is male, ex-boyfriend of resident. Claims female party sent suicidal messages. No response to calls. I remember Dan sighing. That part of town again. I looked at the street name and already felt it in my gut. Hawthorne was in the North District. Older homes, weird mix of abandoned houses and recent renovations. I nodded. Let's get it done. We were there in 6 minutes. 2240 Hawthorne Ave was a small 2-story home, tucked between a boarded-up duplex and an overgrown lot full of garbage and broken bikes. One porch light flickered, casting a weak yellow glow. The house looked asleep. We walked up to the door, knocked hard, waited. Dan pounded louder. "Police department, ma'am, open the door." Nothing. Dan motioned for me to try the number dispatch provided. It rang twice. From inside the house, I heard a muffled ringtone, then a weak click. The call answered, and silence. Then came the hang-up. "She's in there," I said, locking eyes with Dan. "Alive, just not answering." Dan raised his voice again. "Ma'am, this is the Crest Hill Police Department. We are doing a welfare check. If you don't respond, we will force entry." That's when we heard it. A garbled, slurred mess of sounds. Female voice. Could have been wait or don't, or even just mumbling. It came from the other side of the door. Then, click. The door unlocked, but it didn't open. Dan looked at me. "Ready?" I nodded. He slowly pushed the door open. The first thing that hit us was the smell. Thick and metallic with a hint of mold. It stung my nose instantly. No lights came on. The living room was dark, the air weirdly cold, and standing in the center of the room, barely illuminated by the glow from a single candle on a side table, was a woman, naked, pale as paper. Her wet hair clung to her neck and shoulders. Her hands hung at her sides, bleeding from the wrists. Her legs trembled. Her eyes, they weren't focused. They looked right through me. She swayed slightly in place. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Dan stepped forward slowly, like approaching a deer on a frozen lake. "Ma'am, we're here to help. Can you hear me?" She blinked once, then again. She tilted her head and gave a chilling, tiny smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her voice was rasped, barely audible. "He didn't answer. For hours." I moved in fast, grabbing a blanket off the couch and wrapping it around her shoulders. She didn't resist. She just let her arms fall limply to her sides again, blood dripping onto the hardwood. Dan called for rescue immediately. Female, approximately late 20s, multiple lacerations, alert but altered mental status, suspected blood loss, potential overdose, request immediate transport. As we guided her to the couch, I saw it. Her arms were sliced, not across the wrist like in movies, but vertical, like someone who meant it. We tried turning on lights, nothing. We radioed back. Conducting interior safety sweep. Possible self-harm with religious delusions. Request backup to secure perimeter. Dan took lead. I followed with my flashlight. In the kitchen, we found a chair knocked over, a Bible lying open on the floor, stuck to the linoleum with dried blood. Its pages were torn in places. Verses were circled, crossed out, written over in black marker. We made our way upstairs, and that's when the temperature changed. The air was warmer, sticky. A faint orange glow came from the hallway. We followed it into the bathroom. There were candles everywhere. On the sink, the tub's edge, the windowsill, even balanced on the back of the toilet. The mirror had been shattered. Jagged edges still clung to the frame. The tub was filled with dark, almost black water. The rim was ringed with streaks of red. Blood. A lot of it. But it wasn't fresh. I leaned closer. The water had a strange brown tinge, old blood, like she'd been in there for hours, and on the walls, written in smeared blood, were Bible verses, not comforting ones. Not, "The Lord is my shepherd," or "Blessed are the meek." They were fire and brimstone. Woe unto them. The second death, "I never knew you." Each one was underlined violently. Some words scratched into the plaster. One verse, Matthew 7:23, was repeated 5 times, each in increasingly shaky handwriting. Then came the smell from the bedroom. More candles. On the bed lay a thin white nightgown, soaked through in dried blood, a pair of scissors on the nightstand, more verses on the wall. And then, under the window, we found a crude wooden cross, nailed into the wall. Below it, a photograph, torn in half. A man's face had been scratched out. Dan whispered, "This isn't just a breakup." We stood there in silence. The flickering candlelight made the walls seem to breathe. The house felt like it was holding something in its lungs. grief, regret, something darker. By the time EMTs arrived, she was going into shock. Her temperature had dropped dangerously low. She hadn't taken any pills, but she'd lost a lot of blood, and she was severely dehydrated. The attending medic, a seasoned guy named Troy, pulled me aside as they loaded her into the ambulance. "She's lucky," he said. "Another hour, maybe less, and she'd have gone into cardiac arrest. That water probably kept her alive longer, slowed everything down." We watched the ambulance disappear into the night, lights flashing. The next day I followed up. Her name was Shannon Merrick, 27. No criminal record. Worked as a bookkeeper at a property management office. Lived alone. No previous psychiatric history. I spoke with her ex-boyfriend, Daniel Quinn. He seemed genuinely shaken. "She sent me the text late," he said. "Just said, 'I wish it hadn't ended. I can't live without you. I'm sorry for the mess.' Then nothing. I called, over and over. He hadn't spoken to her in over a year before that night. "What was the relationship like?" I asked. He hesitated. "She got very into religion, like obsessively. After her mom died, she'd spend whole weekends reading Revelation, fasting. I tried to be supportive, but she started saying she could hear God's voice, that he had a purpose for her pain." Shannon survived. She was transferred to Crest Hill Behavioral 4 days later. She didn't want visitors, not even Daniel. But before she was moved, the nurse gave me something. Said Shannon insisted it be passed to the officer who found her. It was a small note, folded into fourths, written in shaky cursive. The voice told me he forgave me, that I had to bleed it out to be clean. I thought if I floated long enough I'd be taken up. But then I heard yours instead. A real voice. I think I wanted saving. Thank you." I never saw her again. Sometimes I pass by Hawthorne Avenue. The house sits empty now, boarded up. City declared it unfit. But I can't forget the way it felt. The cold room, the water, the verses in blood. She came that close to disappearing forever into silence and shadows, and no one would have known what she did to herself in the name of grief. We talk about demons and possession in horror stories like they're external forces. But sometimes, the scariest thing is realizing that the voice whispering horrible things is your own.